All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to be doing the standard pamphlet structure, and we're going to do a 5-hole standard pamphlet. So again, you're going to need a section. Oh, the first one we didn't use a section. This is the first time. Yeah, you should have 4, and you're just using 1 right now. Okay. So this is the first one that we're using the full section text block. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a piece of paper that we cut to use as the cover, and you're going to fold that in half. You're just going to take that strip and fold the short edges together, and that's going to be the spine of the book. So in the first one that we did, the French fold, we used a wrapper cover where you can't see the sewing, but this one we're going to actually punch through the spine here and sew, and you will be able to see the sewing. So this thread is going to show. It might be, yeah, we're going to use it, but we'll see. Hopefully it'll be visible. So I've got these punching jigs out. This is the first one that we made that was a 3-hole. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually transfer the measurements for the 3-hole onto this new empty jig that's going to be our punching jig for the 5-hole. And we're going to just do that first. So we folded that piece of paper. We'll set that to the side for a moment. And then I'm just going to line up these 2 jigs, and I'm kind of pulling it back just a tiny bit. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but staggering it back. And I'm going to transfer those marks onto the new one. So we've got that center point, and then we've got the 2 edges that come in 5/8 of an inch from the head and tail of the book. Okay, so there's the new one. We can set this older one to the side. I'm going to hold on to that, and I would advise you to do that. If you decide to make this book for your final, you don't want to have to make another one. I mean, why? So just hold on to that. And then you can now divide this space to get another mark between, and this space to get another mark between. That's going to make 5 holes. So you can do that on your cutting mat. You could do it like that. Or the fastest way to do it is to just bring those 2 marks together and fold the piece of paper. But sometimes if you're using something, I have to keep turning back and forth to make sure those marks are lined up, and then just give it a little pinch. If you're using something that's heavier, it's hard to do this. If you're using like a piece of Bristol or something like that as your punching jig, you kind of can't do this step. But you could do it on a text weight and transfer it or whatever if you were making an addition. So again, I'm just gonna, sorry, bring those 2 marks together and then make a little pinch to divide it, and then make the tick mark like that. So this is really pretty symmetrical, and so I'm not going to worry about doing like a head and tail mark, which I'll talk about later when we do other bindings. But this one, I'm not going to do that because I feel like we just divided this pretty equally. So I'm not going to do that weighted center where you raise the center just a tiny bit so that it doesn't look as heavy visually. But I'm going to skip that. I don't think we need to worry about it, especially for a mock-up. Now I'm going to cut these little V's, and I'm just going to do it with my X-Acto instead of the scissors. So I'm just making 1 diagonal in this direction all the way down, and then I'm making them in the other direction all the way down. So now I'll show you against this that I've got that prepped. So that's my 5-hole jig. Okay. So now, since there's no content in this book, it's easier to do because we don't have to worry about making sure things are on the cover or things are on the back or whatever, because it's a blank book. So right now, what we're going to do is just going to put this into the wrapper and open to the center. And now I'm going to show, I'm not going to try to use that catalog again because I felt like that was super awkward, or I felt awkward doing it. And if you don't, if you're like, I love this, go ahead, more power to you, go for it. But I'm going to show you how to do it just like this. So I'm holding my hand against the back here, and I'm kind of making sure, just adjusting and making sure the text block is sitting centered in the strip. And then I'm going to take, oh, here it is, my punching jig, I'm going to lay it into place. And then I'm going to punch my holes. So I just need my awl again. And I'm just going to punch at each little station at 45 degrees. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to flop. But I also need to hold this into place. I think I'm more worried about that. So I'm going to keep holding it. That flops, it's just going to have to flop. Because I'm trying to make sure that I'm going through the cover at the spine. Last hole. Okay. So now I did the last hole and I just want to make sure that's pretty good. And now I'm not going to use my awl to open these holes. I'm going to use my needle because I feel like if I try to use the awl, I'm going to go too far and make the holes really big. So, and I'm going to do this again before I sew, but I'm doing it now because I felt like they're barely punched. Oop, slid a little bit. If that happens, if you're doing something that slides, if you've already got one hole punched, just find that one and bring it back and kind of shake it and jiggle it back in place and then punch more, punch the rest of the holes. Like that, okay? So now that's got the holes, I feel like they're pretty well threaded through and the paper's punched. So now I've got to get my thread ready. And I need 2.5 times the height of the book. So we did 2 for the first one, and I think 2 would probably work, but just to be safe, let's do 2.5. So we're gonna do, and I do this very roughly, okay? And I've seen people do like this really tight measurement and they almost always run out of thread. So we wanna try to avoid that. So we're gonna do it rough, like a 1/2 inch above and a 1/2 inch below the height. So 1, and grab it where I stopped. 2, grab it where I stopped, and then about 1/2, and then cut that off. 2.5 times. And then I'm going to thread my needle. And I just need a little bit of a tail so I can hold on to it. And then I'm going to start sewing. So now I'm just taking my needle for a second on the inside and just kind of jogging things together, making sure everything's lined up. And then we're going to start sewing on the outside of the book. So we're going to start sewing at the center point, but on the outside. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go in. So that's why I was starting on the inside. Just open the hole, make sure it's big enough for me to get that needle in there. And then I'm going to start on the outside because that's where I want the knot to be, is on the outside of the book. So I start here, push to the center, pull it through. And now that tail that we're going to hold on to is going to be on the outside of the book. So stop about right there, leave about 3 inches. And then I'm going to go out the next hole in either direction. I guess I usually work to the right first. I don't know why. It just feels comfortable because I'm holding with my left hand, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the end that's open. So I'm going to come out the next hole, still holding the tail so that I don't accidentally pull it through. And then I'm going to go in the top. And so if I feel like there's resistance, I can always take a second, go back in there and open that hole. So there. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out that same hole, this hole right here. That's where I'm going to come out. Okay, so I'm making just like a stitch on the inside. Just make that stitch. So I'm coming out, not that, that's where I went in, so I'm coming out this hole. Okay, so now what you might, this is like what we just did with the 3-hole punch. You might be tempted, oh, just go in the center. No, do not do that. So you made this one complete stitch at one end. Now here, you're gonna go across the center to the other end. Okay, so you're gonna cross that center. You're gonna have a long piece of thread right here. So you're gonna go in right there. long piece of thread. And then I'm going to come out the next hole. There's only one hole left. I can come out right there like that. And then I've only got one more stitch to make on the outside. So now I can start to let go of that tail because it's doubled up. It's got a little figure 8 over it, so I don't need to hold it anymore because I can't pull it out. So now I'm going to go in this hole here. And now I can look on the inside, see what's going on. I actually don't usually look at the inside. I keep all my sewing on the side I'm sewing. The side I'm usually the outside, usually the spine. But just so you guys can see, I've got one more stitch to make, and that is to go out the center hole. So I keep doing it so that my needle's coming out where I want it, and I want you guys to see how to fix this, okay? So let's say I come out that hole, and both of my threads are on the same side of that one long thread that's across the center here. So how do I fix that? I just take my needle under that thread, that's all, and just bring it to the other side, because now we want that thread to cross over the center just like we did with that first one. So I'm going to take my thread off. So you can see 2.5 times the height is plenty of thread. But sometimes if you're not sewing as snug as I am, you can, lose a little bit. We're going to tie a square knot across that center. And I usually just give everything a real gentle tug. And then I'm going to take the left over the right. So let me do that again. Left, over right, and around. And pull. That's one. And then I take the right over left. Tie it. And that's your square knot. And again, now the sewing is at the spine of the book on the outside, and we're going to cut it about 1/4 inch away like that. Now you've got this, and you've got to make your cover. So now we're going to do a different kind of style of like a galley fold cover. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And it's similar because we're going to do something similar that we did. We're going to use the ruler and the metal to make a little score mark. And then we're going to trim the cover to fit the fold. And it'll be just a little gate fold. Okay, so here I'm going to take my ruler. And I want the book to sort of be closed. The cover's okay to kind of drape back, but I want the text block closed. And then I'm going to shimmy that ruler so that the metal edge is just barely sticking out. But I can definitely see the metal edge. It's not like I'm questioning it. I really want there to be a little bit of a foredge. So take my awl, lay it down, a couple of scores like that. And then I'm going to fold that in where the score mark is. And I can usually kind of jiggle down, find it. And then I want to make sure it's straight, head and tail. And then I'll give it a like gentle finger tight fold, just a little gentle fold here. And here's where I'm going to do that little cut where I line up the spine with a tick mark on my mat. And then I'm just barely shifting the paper. So here's the paper straight. And then if I just barely shift it up, I can make a little mark, at the 1/4 inch distance. So if you can see this is what I'm looking at right here. So the spine of my text block is right up against that little mark. And then I'm looking out a 1/4 inch away like that to measure and to do it. And I could do that with a ruler too if I needed to. If I don't have a mat, I could just put that up here and make my tick mark like that. Okay, so then I can take triangle and I just flipped it over so that the mark is at the top. That's all I'm doing. This is not going to, make a difference. And just line it up and cut that off. So here's where you can see if you had the offcut, you could use this to make a punching jig. That's what I was talking about earlier. So now that's one cover or one side of the book. And then I'm going to flip the whole book over. Now with everything closed, ooh, I don't like that. It's like shifted up a little bit. So I'm going to take a second and fix that. Right here, it's kind of not straight. So I'm going to fix that. Take a second and just adjust that fold. text block is almost too tall for that. Maybe I didn't cut it quite as tall as I thought. That's okay. All right, now I'm going to use my ruler again to do that final fold. And that's going to be where I can just barely see the metal edge. I want to be able to see it, but just barely. Because I want it to be very straight up and down. I want it to be flush with that first fold. So score it and fold it. And again, kind of jiggle it down, make a better fold here that time. Gentle finger fold, and then again, I just lay it, shift this up just a tiny bit, and make a little tick mark. And then cut it off. So that's how we're going to do the covers from here on out. Is just use this gatefold, even on the double pamphlet, because it's just a simple cover. But you could also use the wrapper cover on any except the double pamphlet. You could use the wrapper cover. Except the decorative too. You really don't want to do it on that because then you'll cover up your stitching. Okay, so there's your 5-hole sewn pamphlet. There you go with the gatefold cover. All right, that's number 2. On to the next. Thanks.